Buongiorno, buenos dias, and bonjour. Welcome to the Cultured Swine podcast, new and improved.
Whoa!
I am Gus, and I'm back, and I'm now with 100% more Dave Carney.
Yo, it's shaking, baby.
Not much, man. How's it going?
Well, I'm living the dream, right? It's winter in Wisconsin, and it's 36 degrees, so loving things, man.
Well, considering it was like negative 12 yesterday.
That's a 50-some degree difference, man. Feels like the tropics over in this piece, dude, so I'm loving it. Loving this track, too, man. This is hot.
Yeah, I like to, it's kind of like we could do like a little trance track and just kind of get into it.
Yeah, I could trance.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I could dance, but I could trance. What's the difference, right? Once you're in a certain state of mind, if you pick up what I'm putting down, what's the difference between a dance and a trance?
I think it's 100% just how many drugs you have in your system.
Oh, okay.
Do you ever see those whirling dervishes in Turkey, and it's sort of like a religious thing. They literally have like these big smocks, and they spin, and they get into these kind of.
Last time I saw a bunch of people in big smocks, it was like a Hillary Clinton festival. I was like, wow, there's a bunch of smocks around here. And they were just twirling around.
Well, these were probably a lot more brown people.
Oh.
And when you were talking about dervishes in
Sure.
in Turkey.
So more like real people.
Yeah, I mean, and it was anyway. So those guys would like go into like these weird like religious fervor dances, kind of like you hear about.
I've seen that at like a fish concert.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, okay,
same thing.
All right.
Only it just takes a little longer to get there because you don't have copious amounts of mescaline or whatever it is.
In Turkey, you might be able to get your hands on some really good hashish.
Good opium.
Yeah, well, I mean, see, little known fact, over in the Middle East, they don't care for drogas, right? Like, it's not really a culture for drogas, but hashish, not frowned upon. Not even a little bit. Yeah,
when I was in Afghanistan, we ended up
That's right, you were there.
Oh, yeah. We had drug tests in the middle of the deployment, and we were always wondering why. Well, it was because they were afraid third country nationals were coming on board and giving us hash or whatever.
Right.
And it was like, don't you think we'd all be in better moods if we were?
Yeah, you would, but you probably wouldn't be so ready to go out there and commit random acts of violence.
Well, there's that.
And you got to stay ready, man. You got to say, hey, let's, by the way, let's just, man, say a shout out to everybody that's committing random acts of violence for the good of the country.
Hey, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. You spent how long?
12 years. Just right around 12 years.
Got a lot of good friends. My great uncle, George Keene, now that we're talking about it, one of the last survivors of Pearl Harbor and just passed away in 2021, RIP. Great Uncle George. Good dude.
Yeah, you said he was there.
Yeah. He was one of I think they had 7 remaining guys that were still alive from the actual attack. Oh, yeah. He took some great joy in going and defending the country after that, let me tell you.
I'll bet, yeah.
So, Gustav, what's shaking, man? This has been kind of an interesting week here in Wisconsin. I don't know if you're listening to this in December, January of 2023, 25, if maybe you've picked this up on planet Mars, but it's 2022, January 2022. I mean, decent week, good week, bad week. How you been feeling? Packers lost, so that's big news in Wisconsin.
Well, we can finally just get past that now. We don't have to talk about them every week anymore. Until Aaron.
You think that's the case? Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
But I mean, it's been a good week for me. Been I start my redevelopment authority business tonight is my first meeting.
Fun.
Yeah, I got appointed to that. So if you're listening 5 years from now, hopefully I get reappointed.
Sure.
But right now it's
appointment jobs are the good ones.
The best. You don't have to run for anything.
No.
I just had to go and sign a oath of don't take bribes and that.
Well, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. Take an oath.
Yeah, why not?
Good guy. Take an oath. Yeah.
So, but how about you?
Good. I'm going to go see Craig Counsell tonight and Damian Miller. You're going to go to a redevelopment authority meeting. I'm going to go hang out with a couple of baseball legends who have won World Series with the Arizona Diamondbacks and have led the Brewers to 4 consecutive postseasons. But other than that, nothing much.
Yeah.
It's kind of hanging.
Just an average day.
Another day in the life of Dave Carney.
And I think we should mention we're coming from the Carney Command Center.
We are.
Out here in Stoddard, Wisconsin. You know what? In fact, you may want to get the applause ready. I just found out that we are the #1 podcast in southern Wisconsin, hosted by Gus and Dave.
I think that's deserving.
Absolutely. Nobody else can claim that. And I think we're finally, we made it. It's time. The people here in southern Wisconsin, southwestern Wisconsin.
That's right.
All three of them, they've been yearning for not just Wisconsin. I would say the nation has been waiting for.
You think so?
For what we bring to the table.
Okay. Well, what are we bringing to the table? This is the Cultured Swine podcast. So what are we bringing to the table?
Well, I always pictured this as sort of an outlet to where we could talk about not necessarily just the finer things in life, but the things that make life worth living.
Ooh,
does that make sense?
That makes great sense.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's, foie gras and caviar every night. Sometimes it's, having a nice cold beer and sitting and chatting with your friends, or talking about how to dress, how to take your coffee. That things that make every day getting through this slog we call life just a little bit better.
So I'm thinking of just like a famous song, because almost word for word what you're talking about, right? Tonight, this isn't going to be caviar and shark bar. This is going to be 8 tracks and 6 packs. This is the Cultured Swine podcast. It's how you get through. So it's not always caviar and shark bar.
Right.
You can be like Biggie Smalls, and I'm fucking you tonight.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This is going to be sex that's sweaty and leftover spaghetti.
Yeah. Doesn't he have a line in there about grape juice or Welch's? Oh, that's a different one. That's a different one.
Yeah, there might be that in there too. I don't know. I'd have to listen.
But, that being said, getting a nice breakfast with some grape juice.
Not bad.
One of the finer things in life. And
Not
we know
bad.
that Biggie Smalls like to eat.
Yeah. The notorious B.I.G., rest in peace, 24 years old. Good God, he was a child.
Yeah,
he was a child.
It's hard to really wrap your mind around that now, just given the legendary mythos that's been wrapped around. How long ago did he die now?
1995.
Damn.
1995. Yeah, I was in Vegas at the time, and not far from Koval Avenue, where Tupac got shot.
Yeah.
And the night that he died, oh my God, the radio station we were listening to, 98.5, I'll never forget, and that was, and still is, kind of like Las Vegas is one of its premier hip-hop, stations. And the news broke, and it was unbelievable. And what was Tupac, 25? Biggie was 24, Tupac was 25. And at that time, I think I was 15 years old. It stuns you in just such a way. Speaking of things that make life better, I'm going to give a quick shout out to Cannabis Depot and a good friend of the show, I hope, Matt Boschka, who owns Cannabis Depot. This is some premium CBD from Cannabis Depot. It makes life a lot better.
Yeah.
You hear that, America? This is CBD. Also, something we were talking about before, there is a potentiality that my quite frequent CBD habit has kept me away, along with my COVID vaccines and being fairly safe, from possibly contracting COVID-19. There's some real science growing around this thing.
Like I said, I've seen some of that. I've seen a lot of that floating around the internet. I always approach that with a healthy amount of skepticism.
As you should.
Just because when CBD first came out, everybody was claiming, it was modern snake oil. It was, this is going to cure everything from your bursitis to your bunions. And I just don't know enough about it to, I got to do my own research, Dave, is what I'm saying.
And listen, I'm not suggesting that is an actual thing. I'm just looking at a story now when we're talking from Reuters 2 days ago.
Sure.
Reuters, a very respectable international publication. Cannabis compound, CBD, stops coronavirus in test tube. But of course, more research needs to be done. 1 day ago from, I think this is WIOnews.com, can weed cure COVID? Cannabis, basically what we're hearing right now, and this is in the very, very early stages, because remember, this is still a Schedule I drug, which means, according to the government of the United States of America, in their wisdom, there is no medical benefit to marijuana. Federally. Now, states are beginning to call bullshit on this, and we know that, and that's great, and hopefully everybody can get along. But here we go. This is... this is basically all over right now. And I would just say this. Look, we don't know because we can't know, right? It's like a lot of things. When you can test something, you can find out. When you can use the scientific principle, okay? You have a theory, then you test your theory, and then you have other observations come and look at your theory, which is not doing research on Facebook. Then you can call yourself a scientist in some ways, but you
Sure.
can actually call that research. That would be considered research. So I'd like to just see what this does. Now, in other countries, they don't have the governor on them that the FDA puts on marijuana here. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm just saying this. Look, I wouldn't be surprised if a naturally produced compound in a naturally growing thing that has been on this earth wouldn't be some sort of cure to a naturally occurring disease, because let's not forget, all medicines that we have and many white pills and all this kind of stuff is all derived from plants. All of this comes from plants. Everything that has been or ever will be here on this earth, and the cures and therefore the causes of are here on this earth. They're naturally occurring. So it wouldn't surprise me. What I think is just so funny about where marijuana and CBD is and where the government stance has been for so long is this. You have got companies, major companies, Philip Morris, just one off the top of my head, that are chomping at the bit for this thing to become scheduled down so that they can start to reap the magnificent profit benefits on what has been a staple of this country since before its inception. All right, we wouldn't have written the Constitution on paper made from trees, damn it. We didn't have Oregon. We used hemp. That's what we did that for. The Declaration of Independence is written on hemp paper. So, you know, the nation's foundation was largely built on hemp, then cotton. Okay, but hemp was really and truly the first agricultural product that this nation produced.
There's an awesome song by a band called Total Devastation. It came out like in the mid-'90s. They were like the like Ultra Cypress Hill. Like every song was about weed. None of their songs, you know, like Cypress will do a song
Did they
about
also
weed.
get punked in the hood?
Cypress will do a song about weed, and then they'll do a song about, you know, shooting somebody and, you know, how I could just kill him or something.
Yeah, but, you know, that I'm not sure that's real or not.
Well, Total Devastation, though, all their songs are about weed, and they have one called Hemp Hemp Hooray.
Okay, I like that.
And
I like that.
It's awesome, and it's basically just a
not
beat.
biting from hip hip hooray or anything.
No. It's a
Hip hop hooray.
Yeah, hip hop hooray.
There you go.
But they're doing it's a beat, and then it's a guy like in an old timey radio voice talking about the founding of the nation.
And now the founding of the nation, old time radio voice.
But it goes through all these things. You know, the term legal tender means hemp. You know, all this stuff.
Right.
You know, and it goes on. You know, that George Washington smoked it, and then it goes through this whole thing. And it's really so. You know, I would since we can't license it, I would say go look it up. Total Devastation.
Okay. All right.
Hemp hooray.
Go look at this. Free shout outs though. I mean, we can talk about it. We might not be able to play it.
Absolutely.
But we can talk about it. Anyways, you know, getting off on this tangent wasn't necessarily where I was thinking about going, except for this. There are so many things that we don't know about everything. And I understand why people want to go through independent research. I'm not saying that cannabis or marijuana can cure or stop COVID-19. I have no idea. I just think it's interesting that question, and there are some legitimate tests apparently going on, at least around the world, according to legitimate news sources, not Facebook, that suggest that is a possibility. Now, what that does and how this goes, I don't know.
Well, I'm
willing
to keep testing.
Oh, I think
independently.
Well, listen, I think it's well within our rights as Americans to do that. If Aaron Rodgers has told us anything this year, you can get immunized from COVID-19 in a lot of different ways. You know, you listen to Joe Rogan, you get some good medical advice, and shout out to the Joe Rogan Podcast Network. Listen, not going to hate, man. Joe Rogan kills it. You know how good he is right now? Joe Rogan is so good that Spotify is removing Neil Young's music.
Yeah.
Because Neil Young said either Joe Rogan or me, and they're like, okay, bye, Neil.
Yeah, well, they also paid $100 million for Joe Rogan.
Okay, all right. I mean, that's a lot of money, but Neil Young's music is going to be played for 100 years. I guarantee 100 years from now, nobody's watching Joe Rogan podcasts. I mean, I guarantee you that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is all just a fleeting.
Oh, very. Well, because it's too in the moment. There's too much topical, relatable things to the time in which we live that would be unrelatable to people, say that they were watching a whatever 200 years from now. Now, the difference in music is quite magnificent. You can listen to a Beethoven composition today that's played by a savant pianist, and it sounds as bright, as fresh, as new, as original as it did 400 years ago, right? That'll be the same thing with Neil Young. So it's interesting to me, though, the power of a podcaster like Joe Rogan, who, listen, he's a talented guy. He's a comedian, does a great job with the UFC. I used to work with the UFC. I mean, I've met Joe a lot of times. You know, seems like a pretty decent dude. And I love his podcast game, especially when he does stuff on aliens. Yeah. That's fun for me.
Well, I used to listen to him a lot because he used to do a ton of episodes where he would just have comics come in and they're talking comic shit, and they're telling stories about backstage at the
See, I never saw any of those.
Oh, those are the best ones. And like the conspiracy alien ones, those are great. Yeah. Since he's gotten like uber political, I don't really care for, and I don't care for that anyway. In any kind of.
I don't anymore. I used to, right? Yeah. Like I used to. I used to get off on that a bit because I liked the idea, and this is something that I'm not sure really exists anymore. I liked the idea of intellectually sparring, right? Like I was a debater. Mm-hmm. Okay, remember debate in high school? People used to debate, and it was actually considered a healthy experiment. Two people come up with opposing arguments. They present their arguments, and you were actually judged on these things, who could have the better debate and who was the winner or the loser. Mm-hmm. The difference between those things and what we do now is they were based on facts, and you were supposed to base your debate on factual argumentation. But whatever. I liked intellectual stuff. I don't think that really happens anymore. So when I used to get off on politics, I felt that there was more, and maybe this is just my, being old now. I felt that there was a little bit more intellectual
It absolutely
integrity.
Doesn't happen anymore, because if you look at what we call a so-called debate, like anytime you have a presidential debate or whatever.
Oh, those things are shows.
There's no debate happening. No. It's somebody asks a question. Whoever is answering does not address what that was just asked. They just go back to talking points. Yeah. And it's just trying to score points against, just either they're trying to get a political gotcha or just echo whatever it is they know their people want to hear. There's no exchange of ideas. There's no consensus. And it's like you said, it's embarrassing. Like I love passion in politics. So my business partner, he and I couldn't be farther apart politically, except for a few things. We both like drugs and stuff like that.
Sure.
So, but he's big into personal freedom and stuff. And he said something.
Well,
funny.
I think we're all big into personal freedom. Well, at least I don't know that we all.
You
are.
would think so.
I would hope that we are.
Well, that's something I'm getting to.
Okay.
Is he said that. He wished he agreed with AOC's politics because he likes her passion. And the fact that she's willing to jump out there and do whatever she said, and whether you agree with it or not, it's the passion he absolutely doesn't, would never vote for her or do anything like that. But it's to be able to admit that that you can see something on another side of the aisle in people. And I think a lot of people are no longer coming to debates in good faith. And I think that's the problem, is there's no good faith anymore. It's just me just trying to talk to the people I'm talking to and nobody else.
Well, here's the thing for me, and I don't care anything like really and truly about politics, because I guess I don't understand politics in the way that politics are supposed to be talked about. Like, I don't really understand the nature of passage of laws and how you write things legally, right? Because that's really and truly what politicking used to be about, debating certain kind of proposals, laws that had measurements that would improve people's lives depending on which side of the coin you were on. That's the idea, I suppose. What I have a hard time with, and this is why I don't get involved, like I don't even know what AOC's politics are. I know she's a person from New York. Does your buddy live in New York?
He's in D.C.
Okay, well, he can't even vote for her anyways.
Right.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. But you hear people say, well, I wouldn't vote for them. Well, aren't they like a local politician? Wherever? Okay, well, then don't worry about it. But here's my thought on that. I don't know that any longer we have what Thomas Jefferson feared, which is an informed electorate. So we see these people, AOCs or whoever they are. And like I say, I don't get into the sides of it because I think it's all fucking nonsense. The point that I'm going to make is this. We are doing that. When I say we, point the fingers back at yourself. So when you're holding the gun, right, you got one finger on the trigger and three of them pointed back at you. Okay? This is our problem. The only reason that any of this in this country, and whether you think that what's happening on one side or the other is right or wrong, or it doesn't matter. It's all happening because we want this to happen. They are nothing but representations of us. So whoever it is that you don't like currently that's doing or not doing the presidency thing or whatever is only there because we put them there. And that to me, more than anything, Gus, that to me is the scariest part, because I have become terrified at this nation's inability, and we're both fathers, at this nation's inability to comprehend long and complex matters. And I mean gray area stuff. I mean getting into nuance and things that require a very weighted debate. The notion that we can have everything simply, everything fast, everything easy. We have an easy solution. This is easy. It's simple. You're weak, you're strong. You're big, you're small. unfortunately, that works when you're 4 or 5 because you have a harder time coloring, in between the lines. Now, as an adult, if you can't do that, we are actually doomed. And it's not the politicians' fault. They are only there because we put them there. And whatever side of the coin you're on, it doesn't matter.
Well, the only thing I would say to kind of rebut that is with the exception of large scale nationwide elections, say Senate and presidency, everything else can be is gerrymandered. Our politicians are picking their electorate, not the other way around.
Yeah, but how did those people become emboldened?
They just get there. I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you on the broad stroke of it.
We the people.
But it's already, I think, the horse has left the barn on that.
And that may be, and listen, and that may be very true. That's basically the point that I'm making. If people were on a very broad level interested in their local politics, right?
Oh, yeah.
Engaged, educated, we wouldn't have let it go this far. Which wherever it is and whatever side you're looking at it right now, let me just tell you, I'm with you all. Whatever side you're looking at it and you're saying this has gone too far, I agree with you. I agree with you. This is all about us. And a representative government, the people's government, by the people, for the people, is so difficult. And this is why I go back to Jefferson. I mean, look, the founding fathers were not perfect people, and I'm not defending slave ownership and all sorts of other stuff because that is categorically wrong. And George Washington, yeah, he was our first president. He was also the biggest drug dealer. What was his first act after winning presidency? I mean,
the Whiskey Rebellion.
The Whiskey Rebellion. You know why? Because he was the biggest whiskey manufacturer in the country. And what was the Boston Tea Party about? It wasn't really about tea taxes. It was about molasses taxes. And why was that important? Because it's the key ingredient in making whiskey. This thing has always been about a major drug deal, and somebody got it. And you know what? We've all gotten, the country that we have because of it. All right. Fair enough. But those people, because of what they were up against, and I can break it down like this. It's like the Sopranos, all right? You've got the guys in Jersey, right, led by Tony, and then you've got the guys in New York, okay, led by Carmine. Okay, so you've got the one side and the other. New York's really running stuff. Everybody else is a subset. But New Jersey feels like we can do this all by ourselves. What do we need you for? So we'll just kick you out. We're going to kill you. We've got our people here, da-da-da. That was the United States Rebellion. You had a collection of wealthy landowners and people that were making incredible amounts of money on the whiskey trade and all sorts of other things that were popping up that Europe didn't know about. Tobacco, okay, corn.
Oh, indigo was huge. The dye indigo.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lots of things. So we're shipping all sorts of stuff back, and we're a British colony, right? I mean, we think about this as like the entire United States from coast to coast, sea to shining sea, rose up and fought against Great Britain. All right, no. It was a few places in the South and the Northeast. That wasn't even in it. That was owned by the Dutch at the time, all right? So we're talking about some places in the South and in some other spots. Listen, these guys came together and understood one thing. As long as everybody was on the same page, as long as everybody knew what was going on, they could keep this thing running and away from the imperialists of Great Britain, France, the Netherlands, all these other countries that were run by monarchies. But it had to be a consensus effort of educated people who were interested and invested in their politics. Otherwise, what you have is the obvious ceding back to the power vacuums that we have now. And that's on both sides. It doesn't matter what way you look at this. That's what happens. So we have become very glib with our freedoms, and we have not represented them well. And you know what? We get what we deserve. I guess I put it like that. Whoever you don't like is there because we deserve it.
I agree. Yeah, the kind of what you said there kind of struck a chord about how the people that are invested in it and that should be interested, I think, are the wrong people right now. I mean, obviously, you have billionaires and multimillionaires that are very interested.
Oh, absolutely,
in what happens.
And always have been. I mean, let's face it. That was who started
this. But it
this
seems
whole
like
thing.
they're the only ones that are, and then everyone else is just cheerleaders. Like people are cheering for Elon Musk, like he's on their team, or cheering for Richard Branson because he's why? I mean, I get it. They're doing stuff, going to space and all this stuff, but
it's inherent. It's inherent in us. Look, if you think about it like this, all right, when we even first started as a country and the government's creation was set up for voting, who was allowed to vote? White male landowners, not poor whites, not women, definitely not the enslaved blacks, not the natives, not Mexicans, nobody, okay? White male landowners. that sets up a certain kind of structure. And I'm not saying that structure hasn't been broken and whatever. People aren't able to move upward now. That's not the point. But I think that as a nation, this isn't all that dissimilar than Great Britain, where we come from, or the Netherlands, or other places which have this monarchical sort of a hierarchy that we love. I mean, think about how we fawn over the weddings of these princes and things and princesses, because we love that. And our own rich, we idolize in certain ways. There was a time in this country where that was not the case, right? There was a 100-year span where probably that was not the case. We've gone backwards in that respect.
Well, that's where I think this whole thing kind of to tie it together, where you're talking about, the rich, the monarchies. We're sort of heading towards more of an oligarchy or a plutocracy.
It's a plutocracy
than anything, because these are the people that their needs are being served by our politicians, not you and I. I always have this joke. I would love to make enough money to where I matter to a politician. That would be a bad problem to have.
Well, look, on a national scale, it's so hard. Like you've mentioned, the problem that I see with the national look is that so many times they don't affect us locally, that we get disassociated from that kind of politicking. And that's why I feel like it's a little, I don't know, it's a little bit, how do I put this? I'm trying to come up with the right phrase. It feels a little hollow to watch national politics in some ways, because you realize, for the most part, you inherently realize that your hometown isn't greatly affected in many cases by what is happening on a national scale.
Sure.
So it creates a sort of disassociation within you that I think sours you to the more localized politics. Say, we live in La Crosse, and Mitch Reynolds is a guy that we both know. We worked with Mitch, and I worked with him on air, and you worked with him as a sales guy. He's a very thoughtful individual. He's a good guy, and he wants to do good things for La Crosse. And people in the town in which we live, I would say, are more engaged than a lot of other places that I've lived before, which is great, because what happens? The will of the people is largely met. It doesn't matter who the mayor is. The will of the people is largely met because people are invested, they're engaged, they love their community, and the politics of it aren't so divisive because it just can't be. Everybody lives next door to each other, and they understand what needs to happen. But once you go outside of that, you're now doing the same thing we do when we go on social media. You leave an actual group of people that you know and you see, and you go to this fantastical world that can be doom and gloom. And then we have to remember, what bleeds leads. I mean, these networks that show you the news or wherever you're getting it from, they got to get ratings. That's what this is about. They're trying to sell you soap and cars and insurance and dick pills and all sorts of stuff, right? Depending on which ones you're watching. So I try not to get too caught up. I mean, when I used to do, radio on that type of subject, I made it a point not to watch anything, and it was all reading.
Sure.
So 8 hours a day you read, because I'd rather take a look at 25 different papers from across the world. And if you come up with a story that threads its way through 8 of those things, you've got something. You watch the news shows, you're getting somebody's opinion.
Well, and you're also being distracted by the pretty blonde girl or the good-looking guy in the suit, or whatever, production value, the Chiron going about on the bottom of the screen, telling you to be afraid of everything.
Breaking news.
Yeah, that's a good point. Read. I know a lot of people that say that. I know you personally. I know you believe that. I know a lot of people that say that, and they don't do it. It's just a sort of a defense mechanism. Well, I just listen to everything and then I draw my own conclusions. No, you don't.
Well, and listening to everything's different too, because again, so even with what I do, and for people that don't know, I mean, I'm Dave Carney and this is Gus Fimple, and we're doing this Cultured Swine podcast. You probably see our names on the screen, but I do a radio show, and when you do a radio show, you don't want to repeat, rehash, regurgitate what somebody else has said with their take. So I'm very careful at the stuff that I listen to and that I watch. The things that I watch, I want to watch because, A, they have a purpose. So I'll watch the things that I need to, sports in this case, because I do that. Also, I'll watch serialized shows or movies that I can do on demand without commercials, okay?
Yes.
So my point being, I control the way in which I consume the media that I get. And that way and I'm going to be influenced to some degree like we all are, but I'll get less of an influence directly on what somebody says. So their take isn't mine. So when I hear people say, I listen to everything, well, you're listening to about 100 opinions. What's yours? Read a factual newspaper, which is giving you black and white facts. Here's what the story is. And then you're able to, like when you read, it changes. The synapses in your mind fire differently. And I'm not trying to be an old dog. I mean, I love YouTube and MP3s and, all that stuff. But there is something about the long form written word that gives you an opportunity to really ponder what it is that you're reading and comprehend this. And it also gives the person that's delivering this to you the opportunity to tell you what you need to know. You get stuff at 140 characters, not the story.
Well, that's
just going to tell you, not the story.
The attention spans. I've even found myself having
that's a real
difficulty with attention span since I got a phone. I've recently made a real big effort at night. I put my phone away. I don't look at it until the morning. I'm reading every night again, and that's something that's really helping me focus a little more, getting out of this kind of ADD, short attention span, willing to retrain myself to consume something slowly versus that, the Twitterverse, where you get it
prepackaged.
Have you? I mean. I found myself going down these Twitter holes where you're just reading sometimes I only read the first 2 lines and don't even read the whole thing. It's like, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. And I'm finding myself getting upset about stuff and I have no idea what the whole context is or everything. So, once I realized that, I'm like, oh, that's what's wrong with all of this. So set the phone down and just get back to, spending some more time in my own head instead of listening to just whatever people are throwing in there, Yeah,
I got to say for myself, I have a good idea that I probably have some sort of psychological issue. I don't know what, and I don't know if I could diagnose it or anybody could, but there's got to be something. I've got something wrong. There's a screw loose in there somewhere. I know it. When I listen to things or I read those Twitters or Facebooks or something, I know what the intention is, right? Like I know what this is trying to do to me because I was a sociological and psychology just nut growing up. All right, fine. I know what the attempt here is, all right? And it's trying to elicit that emotion, which makes me, I don't even know where my phone is now. It makes me damn near afraid of the things. It really does. I'll never forget, Gus, never forget when I got my first cell phone. It was 1999, I believe it was. I was living in Camarillo, California. A couple of miles from the beach, beautiful place, and I had a psycho fucking girlfriend. Hot, great, but psycho. Now, people say that, but, whatever. It was legit. Doesn't matter. We were kids and, going crazy, have at it. The point is, she was already getting me in trouble calling at work, all right? I had a desk job, and she's blowing up the phone all the time. And I'm like, man, you got to stop this. Like, I'm getting in trouble. Well, then they get the bright idea to saddle us with these cell phones. And I'll never forget the horror, the dread that I had sunk right to my stomach. I thought, then I will never, ever, 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 ever be not available. I knew right there, this thing was the end of all of our freedoms. And I had a pager, so we had that, fine. I'll take that pager, little skygram action. Oh, can't get to a phone, no problem. I love my answering machine, man. So the cell phone to me has always, since that moment, and I never forget the day I got that fucking box, I was so upset. I'm like, well, that's great. Now I'm never not reachable. Where were you?
I came to that same conclusion when my work started being able to contact me at any given time. And of course,
they're the ones that gave it to me. I know that's what they were looking for.
I was in the Navy at the time,
paying me for that.
Even if I was, not on duty or something, somebody could always call you, always get you.
I'm surprised you didn't have one way back. My dad worked for the water department in Long Beach, and dude, he had the old brick cell phones.
Oh no, I didn't have one until probably 99. 2000.
Oh, he had them in the 80s. Yeah. They were, and that was sucky because he was on call, and I would be out there, at his house for summer or whatever, Christmas break, and he'd be on call and have to go out in the middle of the night. I was like, I always hated that thing, that pager. First, it was a big brick pager, and then it turned into a brick cell phone. But it looked different. It wasn't like the cell phones that they had, even the ones that we see on TV that the Gordon Geckos had. It wasn't even one of those. It looked like an actual brick black, antenna. Almost like the ones that you guys in the military use.
Like to call in airstrikes and stuff?
Yeah. Sort of. I've seen them in the movies or whatever.
Huh. Yeah, well, anyway, that was, I had that sort of, that same kind of existential dread with my, I get, I have to change up my ringtones all the time and change it because when I get used to hearing something, I get that kind of,
really?
So, and that was one of the, one of the coping mechanisms because I have panic disorder. I take meds for it and all this stuff.
Sure.
And when I was talking to my doctor, I said, man, every time the phone rings, I get this dread. And he said, well, change the ringtone.
Interesting.
Periodically.
You know what? That's a good point, because you become, it's called a conditioned response.
Yeah.
And so you become, it gives you a trigger, and that's either a positive or a negative trigger.
Right.
Save the food.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that commercial now, and we think about it all the time.
Yeah.
Save the food.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So, having that kind of the technology, I guess, aversion. Although
you think you're a troglodyte? You think you're averse to technology? I don't think so.
No. I mean, just a averse may be the wrong term I'm trying to use. I'm thinking maybe more of like sort of this unfounded fear. That's there, but I still use it. It's not like you can't. I mean, we're sitting here surrounded by electronics.
You betcha.
Right now,
probably sucking in more, electromagnetic rays than our body could ever deal with.
Yeah. Well, the sooner we get it over with, the better. But
he's like, I'm ready to cross. All right, hold the phone here. Just just a little bit. Let's get through the podcast.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding.
Strike us down. He's like, and you wanted to be smited, so I smote you. And by the way, have you ever told your wife about your story?
My story? Oh,
yeah.
Ooh, no.
No? Okay, well, we won't mention it here.
No, that's
okay. Well, she ain't listening to this. I know that.
No.
Especially not this far in.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I have that story I'm adding to currently.
Really?
Yeah.
You needed to add to that?
Well, I had the first. That's the first act.
Oh my God.
So I call it's the Old Testament Follies.
Well, see, now you're telling her the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cat's out of the bag, I guess.
So
the Old Testament Follies.
Yeah, the first story is the story of Lot and his daughters.
Oh my God.
The second story is King David and Bathsheba.
Yo.
And then the final act is Job. Which and they're all those. That one's going to be in a modern context, and I'm picturing like Louis C.K. as Job. Riding high, everything comes crashing down, and he's being tested. And then the David and Bathsheba I want to do in the style of a like I Love Lucy.
Oh, that'll be cute.
Wouldn't that be great?
Oh yeah. How many death threats do you think you'll have?
Oh, the more the better.
I mean, I'm thinking a lot.
A lot. But
is your next one going to be called the uncovery of Muhammad's face? like how far do you?
Absolutely not.
How far do you want to go with this? Huh?
No. So what's really got me going though is, like I said, I mentioned I'm reading more. I bought my daughter bought me Mel Brooks's memoir for Christmas.
That's a really nice. That's a nice gift.
Oh, it was
thoughtful.
Perfect. And I just finished it the other night, and seeing his process, how he went through writing all these things, and he was talking about History of the World Part 1, mm-hmm. and I was like, man, this is where I came up with the idea for this, lampooning the Bible basically, and I was like, a lot of things clicked into place in my head of where my creative process comes from. I owe almost everything of my sense of humor to Mel Brooks.
Is that right?
Oh my gosh! And it's reading through all these things and just how he, the movies, and it took me back, and just the idea of how he does stuff, how he wants to tell a bigger story, but he does it through.
What's interesting is that your sense of humor really comes out in your writing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your sense of humor is.
Yeah.
Like Mel Brooks is like a funny guy, like just by sitting down and looking at him. Mm-hmm. Like he just has a funny face, makes funny facial expressions. Mm-hmm. He's just like a funny guy. But yeah, your humor is really in your writing.
Well, and that's, you ask him, he's a writer before anything.
Yeah, for sure.
Way back in the day. I mean, he starts off, he was in World War II, and he was in, he was a battle engineer, and he was at the Battle of the Bulge and all this other stuff. Things I had no idea about how he, his service, which was really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
But then he when he got back, he's back in New York. He starts writing for Sid Caesar, and he had this entire career on television and radio before.
Oh yeah,
before movies. Yeah. And
it was how he got into movies.
Yeah,
was having that incredible
absolutely.
Career. That's how you got back into it in the days.
Yeah.
Right, like all the great, like first Steve Allen, right? Mm-hmm. Great first Tonight Show guy. That's a radio dude. Mm-hmm. I mean, they didn't know what to do with these early TV guys. They're like, well, I guess we take the radio guy. You worked for NBC. Other side of the camera.
So I mean, I would recommend that book for anybody who only likes show business stories, but likes Mel Brooks and likes comedy in general, because it's such a good book.
So my comedy styling, if I were to say, because I don't write comically much. I mean, I've done some comic writing, and I have written things that or online now that have a comic tinge to them. But my writing style and the one that I would say I absorbed the most is twofold. Dave Barry, famed columnist, right? But they also made a show about him back in the early 1990s called
Harry Anderson.
Exactly. Dave Barry is one of my favorite authors and columnists of all time. All right, so he's fantastic, and I've read a lot of his stuff. And George Carlin. George Carlin's writing, his books, his last book he wrote was When Will Jesus Bring the Pork Chops?
Yeah.
Fantastic, man. I mean, he was at the height of his powers, even at the end. Now, his comedy on stage got to be a bit different, and it was more of a diatribe against what he saw as an evil society. I feel like George, at the very end, though, he had lost his wife, and he had been with her for, I think, 50-some-5 years or whatever. And I just feel like he was, he was never necessarily like, hi, you're living in a great place. He always felt like he was teetering on the blue anyhow, which he was. But I think he just
I felt towards the end his stuff leaned more towards like a spoken word.
It was
with a funny bent. Kind of David Cross is the same way now to me. He's got that same.
Yeah, good call.
It's very political. Very. I mean, it's funny, but there is a message being pushed.
I would suggest that, yes. I mean, he was a performance artist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was an actor, a writer, a lot of different things.
One thing I did find out about, especially Carlin, and I can't remember who it was a comic, and might have been on Joe Rogan podcast of all places, talking about Carlin, is those bits he did to the end was written out and memorized. So it's like
it had to be.
It wasn't him just coming. I mean, that's how great he was. It's not coming off the top of his head.
Of course not.
It was him just. So if you stopped him in the middle of a sentence, a heckler or whatever, he'd be able to pick right back up where he was and just keep going. So it was so rehearsed and so well written and so well thought out and so well performed.
Yeah.
That everyone. I mean, that's the beauty about stand-up comedy or performance in general is being able to make it seem like this shit's coming straight off the top of your head.
Well, it's like anytime you see a great musician, and no offense to anybody that's playing, whatever the bar is this weekend, I love that because that's about the level of musician that I am. Okay, like I could maybe play the bar down the street now, but I've worked with some incredible musicians, some of the best musicians that have ever lived. There is something about it that makes it seem so easy, and it feels like they're spontaneously coming up with all of this right now, when the rehearsal, the practice, the dedication, the writing. Who is a really good example of that would be and now I'm forgetting his name. I was thinking about Glenn Fry right now, and it was making me feel talking about the Eagles and such like that. But anyhow, there's a lot of great songwriters, and I'll think of his name.
Joe Walsh.
No, it's not Joe Walsh. I mean, it's Jeez Louise, Glenn Fry. And see, now I'm totally spacing his name. And I've got a couple of his CDs. It doesn't matter because I don't necessarily love his music, but I respect his songwriting. And
sure. Steve Winwood.
No, stop. We're fine. But we can think of it like this. You've got some people that take the approach of, I'm going to do things in the moment. Stevie Ray Vaughan didn't even know chords, right? Didn't know music. He just felt the guitar in such a way that he was playing a lot of that spontaneously, even if it was remembered, where you're at. But there are some musicians, some comics that have such a precise way. Gordon Lightfoot would be, I guess, a good example of somebody who is a masterful songwriter and a perfectionist of songcraft, and every little detail of every little song, of everything he has ever written, is meticulous down to the final thing. And that's why even at his age, and Carlin was at his age, they can do what they do and still be able to perform because it's that, steadied and studied practice. There is something about those guys, and that's why they do what they do, right? And this is one thing I've always bristled at, too, because, you hear people talking about actors or athletes or musicians, they make too much money. All right, let me ask you this. If you were in that movie, you took Denzel's place in the movie, would it gross $150 million worldwide? Because if that's the case, then you deserve the same amount of money that Denzel does. If that's not the case, then that's not the case, right? And he is so uniquely qualified, just picking one guy, for example. He's so uniquely qualified to do what he does that he makes people so much money that he deserves that. Yes, the same thing with athletes. Do they deserve the money? Yeah, because that's what their bosses and owners make from them. Yes, they deserve the money. If you can get it, you should.
And your ass is tuning in every Sunday to watch him play. So,
absolutely.
Well,
and that's why I just, I feel like, when people talk about, I don't like the NFL or the NBA or whatever it is, that to me is largely couched in either fear or
Inadequacy.
Inadequacy. That's a good way to put it. And I think that in some cases, you look at those people that do those things on that stage, and you don't see anything similar to yourself. Like, they are dissimilar humans than us, right? Like, I mean, I spent a lot of time around a lot of athletes. I worked in pro sports for years for people who have no idea what I did. So I've worked in pro sports for years, and I was like, the vocal guy or a marketing dude, not an athlete. But these are different made humans. I mean, they are just differently made. And I think that there is something about certain ones of us that bristle at that, or with musicians, that people that can do what they do, or actors that can be such good chameleons and essentially liars that they can convince you. That's what really acting is, right? Who's the best liar?
Right.
Okay. Those are some of the most creative and I would say intrinsic, like sort of like qualities that are so innate in only a certain number of people that we just, as other humans, we gravitate towards those people, and we always have.
Well, and I think we see, we want to see success, and we're programmed in this country to only want to see success until they're successful, and then we hate them.
Well, then we got to tear it down.
Well, look at Tom Brady. Everybody hates Tom Brady right now. Why? Because he's been at the top of his game for...
Not everybody enough to make Tom Brady not sell those T-shirts for like $40 or those sweatshirts for $120. He's got his own line of clothes out now, and these sweatshirts are $120, and they are going like...
Good for him. I wish I could I wish I could sell sweatshirts for...
You know what? You could if you were 6'5", had the face of Adonis, and had the arm of a god, and had a 22-year NFL career, and won more. Yeah, that could be you too.
Exactly.
See, and that's what I'm saying. Like, we think that we want, and we could do these things. In some cases, that's why I feel certain people bristle at, the NBA, the NFL, or whatever the major sport is, or musician or actor, because, well, I could do that. No, you couldn't. No, you couldn't.
No, Tom Brady and I are literally the same age. There's like 3 weeks between us.
Jesus.
And I just made a motion looking at me.
All right, so I'm going to take the other side of this, because we're here in Wisconsin, and I know that everybody they love his play on the field, Aaron Rodgers. So I'm older than Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not going to say anything, because he's taller than me and everything, but I look better than that dude. Like, he looks older than me by a number of years.
Right at this moment, yes.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But he's younger than me by 4 years.
He's got like this weird... I mean, if he were to shave and get a haircut...
No, he'd still look older. His face is weathered now, man.
Is it the COVID, or is it the...
No. I think some people, it depends. Everybody ages differently.
I suppose,
But Tom Brady, he's a beautiful man.
Yeah.
He looks better now than he almost did when he was in his 20s.
Aaron Rodgers kind of looks like he's about ready to cut like an outlaw country album. And he, he's got that big. If he just went with the handlebar mustache, the long hair, put on a trucker hat.
Yeah.
Maybe that's his second act. Is he's gonna?
It might have to be. What I think it really is going to be he's going to end up making his second act in the resale of collectible figurines. Like, so he's a huge Mark Hamill fan. Big Star Wars nerd. And I think that really what he'll end up doing is making that his second act. So I could see Aaron Rodgers kind of like an antique roadshow type dude.
Oh, sure.
With a friend by his side, just some travel companion, no questions asked. It's all good. And they'll just go around the country, these two, barnstorming, finding figurines of Mark Hamill and other Star Wars characters. And, Rodgers will be, probably making a big online play with that. I wonder now if his dream of being a Hollywood darling or a musician, I wonder if that's kind of over, because, this year for him, and I know that we weren't really ever thinking about sports, but this year for him has been a really awkward one. And I don't know what his designs are for his future. I mean, he's a talented guy, and he's rich, and he's in a lot of businesses, and he'll be fine. But I don't know if what he thought was maybe coming is coming now.
Well, I know that his fiance, and I just saw an article the other day, they don't talk politics and all this other stuff. So that leads me, I know she's a huge hippie. So I know that leads me to believe he probably is on the other end of the spectrum politically from her. So, and we all know that doesn't quite line up with the way Hollywood and everything is. Right. But I know he had that idea of becoming the Jeopardy host or whatever. My thoughts is even if he were to retire this year, he'll probably have a home somewhere, even if it's like in the Kid Rock crowd, where he's going around and, going on Joe Rogan every other week talking about anti-vax stuff or whatever. Maybe he becomes a right-wing politician. Who knows?
Well, and I don't know if he has any. I don't know. That would be really wild.
Yeah.
And I would Jesus, I
Wouldn't
would
that be
hope
crazy?
It would be, because I wouldn't have to talk. I wouldn't want to have to talk about it, and because of what I do, I wouldn't want anything to do with that. No, please don't do that, Aaron.
Oh my God!
Don't even throw that into the universe. God damn it. God damn it. Look at what you've done. That's the sad part about this. It's like going to be who's the next most famous person that is going to become your chosen. That's sad. All right. Anyways, what music have you been tripping out on lately? Because I've got a couple of things that I've been really kind of digging on here.
Okay, so I literally have just started listening to this. It's this trip hop music from Belarus. It's this band called.
That sounds really global.
It is. I think it's pronounced Mokat Doma, and I got it off of a reel on Instagram. Speaking of social media,
you do need to put that phone down.
But the music, it sounds so. It's like a cross between Joy Division and Pet Shop Boys.
Okay.
It's like very 80s, very moody, really kind of dark. Jesus. Like I picture going into like an East Berlin nightclub. And this stuff is bumping in the background, and I'm, doing cocaine with some crazy Russian, double agent, and then and it's got this music in the background. It's real.
Do the Gustav Wilhelm voice.
Okay, so yeah.
Hi, this is Gustav Wilhelm.
Yes, this is Gustav Wilhelm, and what I'm doing is I'm on the eastern side of the block, like I always do.
Yeah,
I like it that way.
So you've got the right haircut for it, right? And you've got largely the right clothes. You've got a lot of turtletnecks.
Yeah.
You got a lot of black.
I need.
Right.
You have to have turtleneck. You got to have. I feel like my pants aren't fitted enough, and then I would need. I don't know. Like a nice loafer.
Sure. A nice loafer is good. A dock shoe is fine too. If you've got the right dock shoe and you put the slips in, that's fine too. A capri would be fine for you. I think you could pull off a capri.
If we're talking about the 1980s East Berlin, maybe some big like Doc Martens or something.
Well, if you're 1980s East Berlin, I mean, Jesus Christ, that's you're in the Russian bloc. I mean, I don't know if they're allowing you to have that kind of fun in the first place.
I'm in a gray jumpsuit.
I was gonna say you gotta think about that a little differently here, man. Like Mr. Gorbachev. No, I don't.
Maybe right after the fall.
Okay.
When it was, can you imagine? I bet it was just off the chain.
Oh, there was some partying going on.
My gosh.
There was some partying going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, so that's what I've been listening to.
All right.
It's kind of like
that's weird.
Belarusian mood music.
Okay.
And then, as always, the 90s hip hop gangster rap.
Sure. Did you know that Big Pun and Fat Joe did like a remix, a different version of 187 on a Cop? That Dr. Dre and
really?
Yeah. Have you ever heard that? You haven't?
No.
Oh, dude.
I need to check that out on the way home.
It's hot. I mean, Fat Joe and Big Pun kill it. And it's the same beat, and they use even and it's steel 187 on the undercover cop.
Really?
Oh, it's hot. It's woo.
Maybe I have heard that. I'll have to.
You got to check that out.
I'll come back to you on that one.
Okay. I've been listening to a couple of different things. I'm a big music guy. I mean, I'm just music probably even more than anything else is my number one passion. Right? If I were to say I'm passionate about one thing, it would probably be music, and then we would go. Sports perhaps and art and different things, but music being the number one thing. So I'm always listening to, like you've mentioned, some 90s hip hop, Bob Dylan's, on in the background once in a while. Classic rock is a big thing. The blues, I'm always listening to some blues, but, I've been getting particularly into recently a newish band called the Teskey Brothers. They're from Australia, New Zealand. It's a soul school. They would remind you, if you put on the Teskey Brothers, you will think of Otis Redding instantaneously, and you will not lose that thought. They just don't happen to look anything like Otis Redding.
No kidding.
At all. The other band that I got to see in Madison back in October, amazing, and I know I've talked to you about them, is the Black Pumas.
Oh,
and
yeah, dude.
I've played the Black Pumas on my show. I feel like I've got some small part to play in their rise and ascension because I was listening to them on an NPR Tiny Desk concert.
Yep.
And it was an at-home Tiny Desk concert during the pandemic.
That's where I heard them the first time, too.
And I was blown away. And I figured I've got to introduce this to an audience that I know has never heard them, and they hadn't, and we became obvious fans of this group for an obvious reason. So after we saw them in Madison, they went on to open for the Stones, and now this group is really just catching fire. So the Black Pumas is a group that if you're looking for good music, and there's some great recent stuff that they've done on some and even solo stuff on some of these late night shows. Like he did a solo acoustic version, the lead singer, I forget his name off the top of my head, of Sitting on the Dock of the Bay.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he plays the guitar and sings it. It's one of the most amazing versions outside of Otis Redding that you'd ever hear. And then he and his partner, the guy that actually makes up, the lead guitarist that makes up the 1-2 punch of the band itself, the Black Pumas, did that Mary Chapin Carpenter song, Fast Car.
Fast Car, yeah.
Which was amazing.
Nice.
So if you're a fan of music, I mean real music, that is a great band to listen to. And then I've been going back to a Texas singer-songwriter that I've become enamored with in the last couple of years in just a really profound way. And there's a new movie about him, Townes Van Zandt, and his wife, not Townes' wife, but Guy Clark's wife, Sarah, that's called Without Getting Killed or Caught. And you can go to the website, and I think that I haven't seen it yet, but you can rent it. It's like $20.99 or something. You can watch it and stream it on the website. But the point is, Guy Clark is a Texas singer-songwriter who never became as famous during his life as he probably should have, because he refused categorically to concede on song material at all. He refused. But his first song that he ever wrote as a child, I think when he was like a young person, was the first real hit for Julia Roberts' husband.
Lyle Lovett.
Lyle Lovett.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first real hit, Come Inside This House. Huh. And Lyle Lovett credits Guy Clark essentially with being the one to get his career going.
Julia Roberts.
Well, yeah. I would go, and now this is an interesting question. I didn't really think about this, but I would go out on a limb and say that Lyle Lovett probably is more famous than Julia Roberts. Do you agree, or am I off on that?
I think you're probably off on that.
Do you think so?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Because Lyle Lovett is a star, but I know Julia Roberts is a movie star.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. Yeah, she's got to be bigger.
But see, Lyle Lovett remains relevant. Like, he's still able to go out there and do his music. Like, he still tours. Like, people still see him. I mean, like, the last time you watched Julia Roberts was on what TNT rerun of Ocean's whatever?
Well, she's been doing a lot of stuff. She's on Amazon shows now, and
Julia Roberts is?
Yeah, she was in.
Oh wait, she was on a. You're right. No, you know what? You're right. It was a good show. She was on that for one season.
Wasn't she like a spy man? Like she worked with the spies. It was.
No, but it wasn't a spy thing necessarily. It was about a government contractor that was doing some weird stuff with soldiers. That was it. It's a good watch. It's a good watch. All right, so she's done that. Okay, I mean, and Erin Brockovich, though, I mean, that was 20 some years ago, man.
You put her in a movie today.
I guess
she's
you're
still
right.
gonna be.
Yeah, you're right. You put Lyle Lovett, though. I mean, see, he probably isn't getting played on country stations, so that's probably more the tell, right? If she goes into a movie today, it's still a current. Okay, all right. Well, fair enough. Then you've answered my question. Julia Roberts more famous than Lyle Lovett.
Yeah.
All right, fair.
Now, talented man. For my God,
extremely.
He's incredible.
Extremely.
But
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, fun stuff, man. Hey, it's a Good Cultured Swine podcast.
Yeah, real quick before we sign off.
Yeah.
I want to do a. I solicited some advice column.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
A friend of mine wrote in, said his daughter, let's call her Chloe, has a vicious case of ADHD. Turns out she isn't taking her meds at school and instead pockets them all to sell in the playground.
Whoa. The playground?
Now, these are some very high-end stimulants, and I admit to sometimes taking a handful to take the edge off cleaning the landlord's study. But anyway, Chloe isn't getting a fair price for the pills on the playground. Sometimes she gives them away for free. How should I explain to my 6-year-old the inner workings of playground capitalism? This is Pillplexed from Punxsutawney. So my answer here is clearly the onus is on the parent.
Yeah, of course.
They haven't been teaching them the 10 crack commandments.
Nope.
They have not been giving them the lessons of the ICEs, both T and cube.
Ooh.
On how to properly handle your business.
Good call.
So, I mean, she's not getting high on her own supply, but she's not, let some of those other kids hold weight while you're out there. Put other people to work.
Well, yeah, but, you got to remember the 10 crack commandments. You never want to let nobody, know what you do. Your next move is, don't you know that
move in silence and
bad
violence.
boys move in silence and violence. You got to take it from your highness. I didn't see mad shit from these chicks. All right, well, yeah, good stuff, man. Fun.
Okay, well, Pillplexed. Get back to us. Let us know how that goes.
Yeah, let us know how that goes. And when you're writing to us, just make sure that you put that return address from the jail, but don't call, as we're not picking up any, any collect calls.
All right. Well, great podcast. Everyone be kind to one another, and peace out. always my sign off before.